It is with the delight that I see in this new year with the Light family that has expanded. I speak to you in Russia, in the Ukraine, in New Zealand, in South Africa, all over Europe, and even in Asia. It is my delight to walk this journey with you as our Light family. So we are launching our handbook for healers, but really it's a handbook for anybody who is raising a child, who is interested in self-healing, or just wants to have something handy for some healthful tips. We are launching it, and as such, my talk tonight deals with health issues that face Lightworkers at this time. On Earth, Lightworkers have sometimes been the workers of frequency, sometimes the workers of light. These are the highly conscious ones, age-old beings that have given in service the desire to balance the planet in action. What this means is that at a time when light was very much needed and momentum to get through 2012, which could have been definitely a problematic year, Lightworkers increased their light quotient. That means that they became very much more electrical, and as such, they carried the opposite end of the stick. The reason for this is that they have done what it takes to ensure a smooth transition from cycle to cycle as much as possible. The planet is filled with humans who have very little insight, very little perception, very shallow vision, yet seethes with emotions. To balance them, Lightworkers have had to become highly electrical, filled with light. Some of you have said to me, why is it that we cannot feel properly? Well, the depth of feeling is the opposite of depth of light. And we have been so busy creating light-filled beings to help bring dynamic balance to the planet that their feelings are much lower than their perception in some cases. What that tends to do is that as this brings the cycle to a close, it also brings health challenges, because health has always been the means for us to know that we are overdue in making certain changes, overdue in expressing that which has been suppressed. So it is time now for us to bring the body's highly charged electrical polarity back into a more grounded position. And so I would like to speak with you about grounding. It has been found that when blood is viewed through a dark microscope, where there are sticky blood cells sticking together, 45 minutes of sitting on the earth with bare feet touching the ground, and after a retake of the blood, it has shown that it has resolved itself, that the sticky blood cells are no longer sticky. Doctors that have been studying this issue of grounding have unanimously said that it is, in fact, possibly our greatest hope for health. They must be unto us, my beloved Light family, because it is time for us to heal not only humanity and the planet, but we do it by healing ourselves. So how exactly do we go about grounding? There are three things that come immediately to mind. One is that you either go online and look up grounding products or earthing products, such as a little mat that you can ground. It's a grounding mat and you can place your feet on it, bare feet. Just kick your shoes off under the desk where you work. Have your feet be on the mat for 45 minutes a day. In severe cases, there are sheets that you can buy. They are a little more expensive, but they ensure that you are grounded all night long as you sleep. This is certainly one way, and of course the other way is to make contact with the earth. If snow covers the land, make sure that your hands and face or head is against a tree trunk. Trees are wonderful lightning rods and grounding devices. We also have something that has just very recently come up, that we have been given the Arasatma breathing techniques. There are 3 levels of breathing techniques, and they are designed to bring balance to the masculine and the feminine within, so that they act jointly in a beautiful pas de deux duet of dancing, no longer antagonistic in a war. And as we do this, war ceases in our cells and the body heals. It has been found that from grounding, even sores of diabetics that just would not heal suddenly heal themselves. We have the Arasatma breathing techniques. This helps enormously with establishing a balanced pH. It helps get rid of toxins through facilitating the release of them through breath, through the psoas muscle. In the case of our new yoga that has come out, it makes the 4th in a series of yogas of enlightenment. And also, what it helps to do is to create inner peace. Most what we call dis-ease or symptoms or illusions of pain and ailments come from tension. Tension is used to sustain density. The more dense you are, the more sensitive you are to aches and pains. If you have contentment, if you have inner peace, you're less dense, more able to cope with things, more at peace, even within change, even within destructuring of the old, the peace lingers. We have as a 3rd solution to how to ground the body and bring health back, the joining of opposites. Now, we have been speaking of this a great deal. How do we in fact achieve it? Opposites will not join in an integrated, harmonious interaction as long as we judge one as more holy, more valuable, more life-enhancing than the other. Good is what serves to repeat to us over and over in our environment, our belief system. What the Muslim in the Middle East, who is very fanatic about his religion, regards as good, Americans may not. He may therefore regard Americans as bad, and vice versa. Good is simply that which affirms what we think we already know, when we live, quite frankly, in an unknowable universe. Next, let's look at the key one. Activity and inactivity. Proactive, receptive. The beginning of masculine and feminine lies in seeing these as opposite. So how do we live them as one? When we act within surrendered trust, the action is almost automatic. We act because it is our next step. We have called these diverse names, such as inevitable action, such as automatic living, such as living from authenticity. The action, it does not come as a defense mechanism with an agenda. It doesn't come as something to achieve. It simply is our next step. The surrendered trust during activity creates passiveness during activity. And in this way, we are acting, but we are passive. We are passive, but even then we are still acting. So this would be one way to start to join these opposites to form a more whole and cohesive interaction of masculine and feminine, bringing about greater neutrality, but balanced neutrality. Neutrality is often stagnation, not this neutrality. There is action within receptivity. At this time, Lightworkers have particular challenges, and let's look at what they are. First of all, I am surprised at how suddenly, over the last 1.5 to 2 years, people in front of me in audiences have built up 2 things. Number 1, heavy metal toxicity. Number 2, allergies as a result of the heavy metal toxicity. I am amazed at the lead that is there. I'm not amazed at the mercury, which comes from amalgam teeth fillings, that is there, and also cadmium. And I had always assumed that cadmium is mostly in people that have smoked marijuana, but I am finding it in people that have never smoked anything of the kind. And what cadmium is coming from often are porcelain teeth fillings. So, and ceramics. So the other thing to consider is, how do we get rid of the metals? Because when our systems are overburdened with these metals, then what happens is we become allergic. And I wish to speak with you about that, but I want to preface this discussion with the following insight. People say to me often, Almine, why are you writing books on how to heal disease, when on the other hand you say that there is no such thing as disease? There is value in the play, my beloved brothers and sisters. Disease is a steering mechanism. It steers the play the way a conductor conducts an orchestra. Except this music is ad lib and has never before been heard, received, or composed by you, much the way that the music that I bring to you is received. It's spontaneously laid out in voice and in instrument. So we are looking at a value to these things. They don't have to be so pronounced. In fact, they possibly eventually don't have to be there at all. But as long as we are not fully joined in our opposites, we cannot see properly. We cannot hear properly the depth of our being that is the current at one with the ocean. For this reason, slight little manifestations in your body can prompt the change, as long as you don't believe that you're sick. As long as you say, thank you, I got the message, and now move on. We dance the dance, even though we know that we are the motionless spectator as well as the choreographer. We deal with the illness as though it is there, knowing that it is not. It is trying to teach us something, and the minute it does, it will be gone. Therefore, don't label yourself, oh, I'm a diabetic, oh, I am a cancer survivor, or I am this or that. No, those are symptoms you have chosen to use as a label. If you put in place in your life the things that they are trying to remind you to express, they are gone in an instant. So the information we are bringing you is how to dance the dance with these things long enough so that you can get the insight. To look now at allergies. People associate allergies with runny noses, stuffy sinuses, with blotchy, itchy patches on their skin. But there are so many reactions that your body would have to something that you are allergic to, you cannot even begin to imagine. For example, you might be allergic to rice, to potatoes, to something you really like fish or chicken, or even broccoli that you might consider healthful. When you eat it, it brings contraction within the GI tract, everything tightens up, and now you have constipation. It might bring, on the other hand, diarrhea. If it is really irritating the GI tract, it might bring insomnia and, most of all, psychological feelings of tremendous angst, a sudden sadness that you don't know where it's coming from, a sudden hopelessness, but most of all, anxiety. These could all be due to allergies. Sometimes children will not sleep through the night because there is so much adrenaline in their body because they were allergic to the very soap that you bathed them in before you put them to bed, to something healthful that they ate at supper. It takes a while for the adrenaline to squirt into the bloodstream, but when it does, it's interpreted as an emergency. It also could give bad dreams to someone. Now, the metals. What to do about them? The most commonly recommended thing, because you can of course have it done in a quicker way by having chelation therapy, but if you do, they must test the strength of the kidneys to make absolutely sure that you can handle it. But chelation therapy is done with an IV drip, an intravenous drip. It will chelate it out much quicker, but here is the milder and less expensive way to do this. You need as much vitamin C a day as you can handle. Minimum 1,000 milligram of vitamin C a day, preferably 2,000 or 3,000, but you want to take it not near bedtime, so no later than about 5-6 o'clock, and you want to take it in a way that does not make you get diarrhea. So you start with 1,000, you use it for a while, and then you try another 1,000, and you make sure that this is not producing the loss of nutrients through diarrhea. Vitamin C in high dosages chelates out metals. Secondly, you would like to use chlorella, spirulina, blue-green algae. Just be aware that it is contraindicated with vitamin C. So if you have vitamin C one day, you should use that the next day. That has the benefit of not only pulling out heavy metals, but also radiation, which is another topic I wanted to look at. We have chlorella's downside is that it will cause constipation. So there are ways to modify that. If you use a good chelated magnesium on the day, that means like magnesium glutamate, magnesium citramate, etc., that you could loosen the bowel enough as you take the chlorella that it's not a problem for you with your bowel. The reason so much of my talk is devoted to the GI tract is that there are tremendous problems for light workers lately with bowel movements. They either can't go at all, or they're going too many times, or there's dumping syndrome, which means it's as though the food just goes right through. That is because they've become allergic to the food. Now, we have another thing that would help get some of these heavy metals out, and that is the Bacana remedy Toxex that you can order through our office by contacting Jan in our Ohio office. When you use Toxex, I would highly recommend that you also use apohepat and ityrus. Apohepat makes sure that those metals don't lodge in the liver by the liver not functioning very well, because after all it's been in a toxic terrain. And the ityrus makes sure that it doesn't get stuck in the lymph glands. So you're pulling the metals all the way through by combining Toxex, apohepat, and ityrus. Use 20 drops 3 times a day of each of these, as far away from meals as possible. You can do the drops together in the bottom of a little cup, add a bit of pure water and drink it down, but don't let them come in contact with metals. They are spagyric homeopathics. They are extremely sensitive, and metals are counterproductive in their use. Now, leafy vegetables, particularly things like kale, etc., are wonderful for pulling out other metals we might have as toxicity, such as iron. Iron that is not chelated is hostile to the body when taken, and copper can be in excess for many people, as well as the others that we have already mentioned. Lead is a particular problem, and because lead is such a problematic metal, it was the downfall of the Roman Empire. Only the wealthy, meaning the leadership of the land, were able to have lead pipes bring water for their baths, for their drinking, etc., straight into their home. And this caused them to go half crazy, crazed, depravities resulted, etc., and this craziness made it so that they could be overthrown by other cultures that were therefore more virile. And the cans we use in canned food, restaurants use it. Canned food is in an aluminum can, but the seams are put together with lead. Some old houses still have lead couplings between pipes. We are looking at something that is more harmful than what I have even mentioned. As many of you know, we have been studying chemtrails now for some years. And the chemtrails are the fuel of airplanes that are dumped over populated areas with fungus in it. It's like a green jelly, the fungus, and it looks like something you see in the movie Flubber, where they have a green jelly that bounces around. That is what it looks like, but it's less dense. It is in fact fungus that grows in the tanks of airplanes above something like 30,000 feet. They had assumed that it would cause a huge pandemic of lung disease that would look as though it is tuberculosis. And they had thought that it was for sure, because after all, somebody with a common cold could wipe out villages in the Amazon when they went there as a missionary, because they had never encountered the common cold and had no resilience against it. There's no resilience in us against a fungus that builds up in gasoline above 30,000 feet. So they had hoped for sure it would make us ill. But the Lightworkers of the earth refused to be victimized. They became self-empowered in many areas of their life. They took up their strength, and this prevented this from happening. Now, a side effect of this is that it is leaded gasoline that has been dumped on populations, and there has been lead poisoning as a result of it. So we have to get it out, my brothers and sisters. At a spiritual level, why is this here? The spiritual level is the judgments that we've held. The densest of all things in our spiritual evolution is the judgments that begin with this is good and that is bad. You will say to me, now, Almine, how can a mass murderer doing horrible things to people possibly be good? That is because he is displaced out of his reality. In parallel realities, his actions would be reversed, and he would actually be a beneficiary of those people. But when we open gaps between the yin and the yang, which are opposites to one another, parallel realities, things that come through are seen as hostile by us. The vice versa is true as well. As we try and help them, it is seen as a horrible act of violence against them, because we are opposite to them. This issue of opposites makes the war within. There are no opposites if there's no up and no down. There's only a up and a down because we think of something as worthy and unworthy. It is so interesting that in biblical language, it is often the word the upright that is used for those who are righteous or the good people, because it is so that we regard things that are upright to us as good. It is time to let our judgments go. We don't need to judge anything as good or bad. We just need to observe, knowing that there's a place for everything or it wouldn't be there. We have come now to the radiation issue. The recent meltdown that has plagued Japan, Chernobyl, the planet has never recovered of that. Nostradamus has said that wormwood would defile the waters of the earth. Chernobyl is Russian for wormwood, and it has indeed. The children in my daughter's school are doing tests on the seaweed on our beaches. We have very pristine beaches in Oregon. Yet the Japanese current has traveled down the west coast of America, and they are testing radiation now in all seaweed samples collected. Our water table is polluted with radiation. So what do we do about this? We have a phenomenal product, first of all, which is Radinex. Radinex was tested by the German scientists that developed this spagyric homeopathic, but when they went all the way up to Chernobyl and touched the building. Now there is a 40-mile radius fence around Chernobyl, and the Russian scientists were waiting when they returned, and they were standing there with their Geiger counters, and they could detect no radiation in them because they had used Radinex before, during, and after. Radinex is phenomenal, and again, highly, highly recommended that we use on a semi-regular basis. In women, radiation lodges in the mammary glands. In men, in the prostate. We are seeing cancer numbers rising with these particular type of cancers particularly. And interestingly enough, it has also risen in Japan, who eat a lot of sushi, using raw fish, using shellfish at times, using the seaweed. We have to now, unfortunately, start to consider what we eat in the form of fish and shell food. And what is the reason for the radiation? The radiation we have become poisoned by is the belief systems of others. And I will look at that in a second, but let me just recommend that every 3 months to 3.5 months, you use at least 1 bottle of Radinex. Again, strengthening the lymph with Ityrus, strengthening the liver with apohepat will absolutely enhance getting rid of the radiation. So the radiation is there because it is getting harder and harder not to look at the reality that man has made for himself. All around us there is suffering. When I open up to my classes questioning, I hear often as the very first question, when will the suffering of people around me cease? Financially, with health, losses, and emotional losses, as generations can't speak to one another anymore, as children go their own way due to lack of care, or even if you gave them good care, due to peers and their influence when they had lack of good care. So we have a situation where there's tremendously much suffering around the earth. Earlier in 2012, I had a course in which I had explained to people they must not look left or right at the suffering, because they are the salt of the earth, and if the salt loses its flavor, there is no salt anywhere on earth. What I meant by this, we create our realities by what we emphasize. If you look at humanity's reality that they have made for themselves, and you try and fix it, you try and condemn it, you try and look at it so you can feel less guilty about thriving or whatever it is, you're not emphasizing the positive things that you want in your environment. You're not creating a higher reality. If enough of us put emphasis on the poetry of life, on the grand surrender trust that can produce adventure in life, at being wonderfully happy each day at our existence, if we can't within us accentuate our abundance, then enough of us will not be making a new reality to lift humanity into. In this way, you can describe the Lightworkers as the saviors of the earth. They emphasize through living within certain principles that will bring about a new reality. But if they look at the reality of mankind with grief and empathic suffering, they will not be able to do this. The highest service you can render is to flourish, not to equalize with those that you regard as less fortunate. Less fortunate means that they have not emphasized within themselves certain principles to live at a higher reality. You are here as a way shower. Let's take up this challenge. Let's take in our hands the good things of life. Let's find something to be happy about, even in moments of stress. We do not live from fear. We live from the surrendered trust that life is good, no matter how the appearances may seem.